Last week, we put out our post-spring, post-portal top 25 teams in all of college football, and we had Nebraska at number 24. Now, we understand whenever you make a list and put it out on social media, you're already wrong. You've already lost. The list is already causing you to lose credibility or you're a hack or whatever. And we understand that, but we got a lot of pushback on Nebraska at 24. Now, one of the things that we feel very privileged to be able to have about this show is the interaction with y'all, the community with y'all. And so felt like it'd be appropriate for us to get together as the college football community that is the Hard Count and discuss a little bit why we have Nebraska at 24 in greater depth and respond to some of the things that maybe were issues for some folks with where we rank Nebraska. So we'll do that right now. But before we get to that, make sure you're subscribed right here. This is a one-off video. We do a live show 3 times a week that also goes on podcast. So type in the Hard Count with J.D. Pickell, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts, you can find this show. Again, full hour-long episodes. This is just a one-off clip that we only do on the YouTube channel. Now, on the YouTube channel, we are live 11 a.m. Eastern, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So subscribe here. Follow me on the socials. A great way to interact as well, which is how we're kind of putting together this segment, is interaction from those socials, at J.D. Pickell, Twitter, Instagram. We appreciate y'all in advance for that. So the big pushback, some of the things we heard when we put Nebraska at 24 were, hey, they went 5-7 last year. JD, if you're making this strictly off of what a team is at this point in time, Nebraska has proven they are not a bowl team. That was one thought. The other thought was, hey, they're always overhyped in the offseason. They always have a number of one-score losses, and you always tell us, all you folks that sit behind a microphone, that's going to translate to close wins next year. They're going to get over the hump next year or whatever, and we understand that thought as well. One other thing we heard was you are betting far too much on Dylan Rhule and what he's going to be at Nebraska. Just because he had a good spring game, JD, doesn't mean he's going to lead them to the Big Ten championship and Nebraska's going to do X, Y, and Z. For the record, we didn't predict Nebraska to go to the Big Ten championship at this point in the season. But regardless, I understand what you're saying. Reasonable people can disagree, so we're going to talk about this right now. Going back to how we put this list together, I did my best to put that list of top 25 teams. I ranked them on what they are currently, not a prediction. And so basically I took a look at the stable factors, if you will, for what Nebraska is when I put them at 24. And to me, the stable factors are as follows. The defense should be really, really good. Why do we think that? Because they have 78% production from last year's squad on that side of the ball back. DC Tony White, he's back. The 3-3-5 in all its glory will be back in Nebraska. Not just the production, but also now the leadership. That is massive. Isaac Gifford, single-digit wearer, he's back. Nash Hutmaker, big number 0 in the middle there, he's back. Also a single-digit wearer. And if you know how Matt Rhule operates with giving out jersey numbers, you got to be a dude to get a single digit. Both those individuals have one, as do other members of that football team, but I wanted to highlight those two specifically. So bottom line, the defense, from where I'm sitting, should be good again. Last year, they allowed 18 points a game. So on paper, as we sit here in May, I feel pretty confident about the defense being a top 15 unit yet again. Have all the ingredients to do that. They also should be a physical outfit offensively. JD, the quarterback play was abysmal. I hear you. We'll get to that. But what they weren't abysmal at last year was running the football. Ran the ball for 175 yards a game last year. They bring back 76% production from last year's offense. Okay, now, to be fair, Heinrich Harburg was the leading rusher that was a part of that football team last year. I don't expect him to duplicate that kind of performance in 2024. Ton of experience on the offensive line. Over 150 starts among that group. Okay, so those are the stable factors. Those are what I would consider to be stable about Nebraska right now as we sit here in May. Defense should be really good. A lot back from last year that made that defense what it was. Also the leadership back from that defense that made it what it was. Should be able to run the football. Offensive line is solid. Still have some good backs that are back with this team. I like how they're built that way. So you have the stable factors, and then I think also whenever you put together a top 25, you have to build in some assumptions. Now notice I didn't say predictions, but I think it's fair to have some assumptions as to what they're going to be from 2023 to 2024. Because last year's team is not this year's team. You have to kind of account a little bit for the change of a full year. So my assumption is that a Matt Rhule football team will trend how a Matt Rhule football team typically does. Look at Temple, look at Baylor. Those first seasons there, they were very bad. Very, very bad. I believe they won like 1 or 2 games. His second season at Temple and Baylor, everyone's talking about the win-loss number preseason. They're talking about, can they make a bowl game? Will they win 5 games? Whatever. Temple and Baylor both made bowl games, made significant jumps. Okay? Nebraska, I believe, and we've said it many times on this show, if you've watched us for any length of time, we feel like Nebraska, and Matt Rhule has said this, was in a much better starting point than Temple or Baylor at a roster level. So the talent at Nebraska was already way higher at Temple and Baylor. That's why they won as many games as they did last year. That's why they were as competitive as they were last year. So if they trend how those teams trended at Temple and Baylor, they should be able to make some sort of reasonable jump forward. Now, how much remains to be seen, but that was a factor for me when I put them at 24. Also, this is probably the biggest factor. This is probably the biggest disagreement point for us because, again, this is where we can have opinions. This is where we got mixed up with different folks that thought Nebraska shouldn't be in the top 25. We think that the quarterback play, the assumption is that it will be better this upcoming season than what it was last season. Now, again, it's an assumption, not a prediction, because I don't think it's asking that much for the quarterback play to be better than last year. Like last year, Nebraska was one of the worst teams in the country when it came to their interception percentage. Nebraska did not have a quarterback on the roster that threw more touchdowns than interceptions. So if they just get solid quarterback play, I think they could be in a different position going into November. And overall, when we look at their season, the pushback I think on that is, well, JD, you're saying that Dylan Raiola is going to come in there and be the savior of the football team. I'm not saying he's going to be the savior. I'm just saying I think he's going to be an upgrade from what you had a season ago. Because last year in those 5 one-score losses, 4 of those games, your quarterback turned it over 2 or more times. If Dylan Raiola just goes 20 touchdowns and 6 interceptions, how good is Nebraska? What kind of win-loss total are they looking at the end of the season? I'm not asking him to go be first-team All-Big Ten. I'm just saying if Dylan Raiola can take care of the football, stretch the ball downfield when those safeties creep up on the run game and have some big plays, have some explosivity to this offense, this might change the game a little bit for the good folks in Lincoln, all right? Not predicting, assuming that they're better at the quarterback position. Now, if Dylan Raiola translates to being, I think, stable, maybe Nebraska's even higher on that list. It should be noted, too, if you're in the business of predicting right now in May, more power to you. We salute y'all. Schedule isn't crazy. Schedule's not nuts. Like, you get a little ramp up to the game at Ohio State, and then there's no Michigan, no Oregon, no Penn State. Like, there is a path here for Nebraska to make some real noise. I've said it many times. They are a bowl game kind of team this upcoming season. I fully believe that. But as we sit here in May and we rank this team, the defense and how they're built on that side of the football, what they bring back on the offensive side of the football, the culture and the structure that I expect them to be another evolution forward in year 1 to year 2 under Matt Rhule. There's a lot of makings here, I think, for Nebraska to be a top 25 football team. And I'll say this. The one-score loss thing gets thrown at you a lot if you're a Nebraska fan, or if you're talking about Nebraska. They say, well, they won 5, or they had 5 one-score losses. They were that close, and I understand. That's a very stale talking point at this point in time. But I do think we have to at least consider the fact that it is tough to lose 5 football games by 1 score. We also have to consider that to be in a 1-score football game, you have to be competitive. And so let's just call a spade here. The football, it's shaped a little bit odd. It bounces in different directions, and sometimes it comes down to the bounce of a ball. Now, for Nebraska, a lot of those bounces of the football came from your quarterback throwing to the other team. That was your proverbial bounce of the ball. You didn't help yourself in that category. So I'm not here telling you that Nebraska could have been a 9-10 win football team last year, but I am saying let's not pretend like a 5-7 team that lost 5 games by 1 score is the same as a 5-7 football team that lost 3 games by 2 or more scores. I think Nebraska is a lot more competitive than a lot of folks want to believe. Last thing I'll say here, if you don't like where we had Nebraska, you're really not going to like where Joel Klatt had Nebraska. I think he had them at like number 22, which we appreciate. We had him at 24, so I mean you're really splitting hairs at that point as to how you felt about Nebraska. But the bottom line being here, I feel like Joel Klatt knows what he's talking about. If you don't like what we have to say, go listen to what he has to say, because I think we're kind of aligned there in how we view this football team. Point being, we're not on an island here putting Nebraska in the top 25 of our post-spring, post-portal rankings. So let me know on Instagram and on Twitter how you feel about Nebraska heading into 2024. Do you have them in the top 25? Just outside the top 25? Maybe you have them even further back. Regardless, we'll talk about it. We'll continue to keep this conversation rolling. We are live tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern, right here on the On3 YouTube channel. Get in the live chat. We'll have a good time. We'll chop it up, talking national championship teams and what they have to do to get there. Talk about some what ifs. It'll be a really good time. So make sure you're subscribed. Lock it in. Follow me in the socials at JD Pickell on Instagram and on Twitter to make sure you don't miss a minute of all the content we have on this channel for you. Hey, love y'all. Appreciate y'all. Going to keep this party rolling, and we will see y'all next time. Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.